thinking about how to start this, but I forgot I have a complicated name. So, um, my name is Manori Sumanasinghe. I'm an architect and a designer based in Los Angeles, California. And I worked on this topic with my partner, Nelson Abreu. He's an engineer, so just to establish a context. So for the past 20 years or so, I've been really interested in and fascinated about finding out what's the relationship we have with beauty, art, design, and technology. And for me, it's about trying to understand the world that we live in, but also then figuring out how to apply it in a sense that we live in a world that has a lot of challenges, and I feel like we all have a personal responsibility to contribute in any way we can. And I figured what's the best way to do that is to figure out what's your place in the world. And I've really been interested in design and architecture since I was a kid. And it was important for me to realize or figure out if that passion was just a passion, but if we could also do something with it. So in finding answers for this question, I've come up with some ideas, and I want to share with you today about design and technology's impact on the consciousness and how we can use that as a tool to improve our well-being. But I want to start talking to you by talking to you about being and beings. Anybody who's taken some philosophy classes probably is a little familiar with this concept. My interest in beings come from, being and being comes from trying to understand the world around us. So what is being and what are beings? So as you can see, everything around us, all of us, plants, our pets, ourselves, they all consider to be beings, all beings. And then being, as in eating, sleeping, working, going to the park, hanging out, but existence, living, experience, and reality. Collectively, being for me is consciousness and phenomena. That's everything that we are about and things that we are trying to study. So I had a lot of questions about being, and I started out asking some of the big questions about what's consciousness, who are we, what are we here to do, why does the universe exist, and what's the purpose of all of these? And if those questions weren't enough, I was asking another layer of questions. And what's our relationship with the built environment? What's the built environment? Our houses, the buildings, roads, parks, monuments, everything around us. So the questions that I was asking about trying to understand our relationship with the built environment and aesthetics and beauty and design. Some of the questions, I'm going to pop them up, but I'm not going to read all of them to you. So basic questions like what's beauty, what's the function, and does design have an impact on well-being? You see, the process that I try to understand a subject is to ask a series of questions. This is how I think. It's a technique that I use when I want to really dig deep into a topic. So I was asking also about what's the relationship with the built environment. What specific attributes do each component bring? Like one shape versus the other. What's the impact of different materials that we use? The color, light, texture. Also, what's the impact of technology on being? And does that play some kind of role in the progress, the development of being? So through asking these questions, my partner and I, we arrived at a hypothesis that design and technology, in fact, do have an impact on the consciousness, and that we might be able to use this as a tool to improve well-being and the progress of the consciousness. We think that well-being is at the center of everything, that when you say well-being, it's your overall health and happiness. And it's not just your health and happiness, but your environments as well. And then happiness includes things like life satisfaction, autonomy, positive experiences like your interactions and relationships, meaningful relationships that you build with people, your exposure to nature, your exposure to culture and the arts, and even not abnormal, sorry, that's the wrong word. I think extraordinary experiences that we have. Also, purpose and meaning count towards happiness a lot. Relationship and community and growth and progress contribute to well-being. So now that we sort of established what well-being stands for me, I want to talk to you a little bit about what I think is the point of everything that we do at these conferences when we try to understand about the consciousness, the work that we do, the research that goes into things. How do we apply that, or what do we do with it? And I think it's to find applications in improving overall well-being so that we can improve the quality of life of people, but also the surrounding. Because nobody really exists in a bubble, like we all are living in a world where we're interconnected to each other, and we don't really grow alone. So if all of us want to grow, I think we should all pay attention to how we grow as well as our surrounding improves. So with that said, if we want ourselves to grow, we also want our environment to grow. And this, for me, there's a relationship between the environment, the overall well-being, and the design of the environment. Let's take a look at that. All of us react a certain way when we come across objects. We react in a certain way towards a phone, about the functionality, the colors, and the textures, the shape and form, overall way it's organized, the materials used. So I want you to take a moment to take a look at these pictures and think, how do you react? What's your reaction when you take a look at it? Now think for a minute about what causes that reaction. Is it the colors, the textures, the way it's placed? So just pay attention to that and bear with me. So in a place, in addition to the colors and the textures and the shapes, we also think about the scale, like the space that you occupy and the relationship you have to that space. Light, ventilation, composition, materials used, methods of construction, technology, and so on. We'll take a look at a few pictures. How do you react to those environments? When you go to a museum versus when you go to the living room of a art gallery, an intimate space. Places to contemplate, but it can be a public space, private space, or even in in a park. And you see that when you go to certain places, like a church or a sanctuary, the environment that you're in has an impact on how you feel, you be in that space. So some of the reactions we could get could be things like awe and inspiration, or we just want to get out of that place because we just feel something's not right and we feel agitated and we fear chaos. So my question at that point was to understand what causes that. Like, it's not just the material things. So then I understood there's a second layer of information. There's the shared memories, the history and the legacy of a place. If you think about antiques or things that have been handed over, like heirlooms, there are certain history that comes with it. It has been passed over for a while and so on. So, there's anyone from New York? There's a place called the High Line in New York. It used to be an abandoned railway line that was then converted into a park. And now it's a beautiful urban garden. So this place has history, legacy, and memories that sort of use that to repurpose it. But beyond the history and the legacy and the materials and the colors, I think there are other factors that contribute to how we feel towards design and objects and places. I think there's an impact on what the intentions of not only the person who designed it, but the person who uses it. Like, a place, let's say, can be designed for something else, but then people go about and use it in different ways. This is an organic process that happens. So in that process, we bring our intentions, our energy and thoughts and sentiments to it. And I think we should spend a little bit time thinking about this and trying to understand how it impacts us as people, as beings who are trying to understand how to navigate through the world that we are living in. And I think in a place like a church or a museum, or even if you go to a place of like a music venue, anywhere you do adoration, you notice that it has something that you can't quite explain other than the energy that it has, that has built over time, that people go there to admire and see. So this energy component of it, I think, plays a huge role, but we don't really talk about it in design or in architecture all that much, and I think it's important to explore that. So like I said, and I think it not only as designers we need to understand it, but I think as users we need to understand that. So we begin to pay attention to, when we go to a place, what we feel might be impacted by these other components. And we should be able to, in this process, differentiate and understand what are the physical attributes, like the colors and the textures, but also the non-physical attributes, like the history, and embedded by the users and the designers, like the energy and the intentions and the biofield. So looking at these, we thought, okay, now it's one thing to understand, but it's also important to figure out how to find applications as an engineer and an architect. That's sort of what we do. So my husband and I, he's my chief culprit in adventures and partner in all sorts of exploits. We will be launching a studio this summer called Nomascape Studio. We will be doing work that occurs at the intersection of design, technology, and well-being. We'll be doing spaces, like architecture spaces, but we'll be also doing products and apps. I've been trying to do the applications in architecture projects that I do, but I'm not the one who's financing it, and I'm not at a financial position to do that just yet. So I have limited control over the extent that I want to go to, but we figured if we start with products of a smaller scale, we could potentially do some work exploring and trying to understand what we are working on. We have an app that we are developing right now. It's to help people train to do mindfulness mindfulness training, and also to have extraordinary experiences, because I think these experiences are natural. They're not, only exclusively for some special people. And I think people can and should train and be able to harness some of these potential of this. So one of the things I want to emphasize is that the app that we will be working on, and sorry, I didn't talk about the two pods. We are developing two pods right now also. One is a fully enclosed pod, and the other one is a semi-enclosed pod. They will be training tools for people to use in different applications like relaxation, but also impactful experiences facilitation and stress reduction, boost creativity, and so on. We want to emphasize that we are not trying to use technology as a way to create dependency or create crutch, but we really want to help people to use this like training wheels, To wrap up this topic, I want to invite everyone here that we found our passion, that something that we really care about, also combine it with what we're really interested in, consciousness science. And we feel that we've gotten a lot of satisfaction in the process of exploring these topics. And I want to invite each of you to find the area of interest that you have, combine it with your passion, and join it with the knowledge that we have that's becoming available at these conferences through all the research that everyone's doing. And try and do something that we can together make this world a little bit better place than we found it. Thank you.
Are we on? Thank you, Manori. Yeah, thank you for your presentation. Are you familiar with Chinese and Japanese feng shui, and how does that differ from the kind of research that you're doing?
I've actually looked into feng shui and the Indian philosophy of Vastu. They all look into this same topic, and I think sacred geometry also have talked about these topics. I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't studied it at depth. My education has been in Western architecture, Western philosophy, but I did study Buddhist philosophy previously before I moved to the States. So I do have awareness, but from what I see, there are similarities in the topic, and I think there's a lot more that you can combine and dig deep into this topic, because I think there's value, we shouldn't lose the knowledge that came with those practices. And I think we, in the process of getting caught up in this material world that we are in right now, we're sort of forgetting that when we are doing buildings and objects and, so. Thank you.
This question concerns our relationship to water.
Okay.
Now, has anything been done on increasing our consciousness or any of the side abilities or anything from, say, sitting in a hot tub or jacuzzi relaxing, or sitting adjacent to a large body of water, like swimming pool in the ocean, or simply having a water fountain just slowly trickling in your office or your bedroom at night? Does water seem
I'm not going to give you a scientific answer to this because I'm not a scientist, and I know there is research that's been done in this topic. But I've often wondered about this because I'm from Sri Lanka. It's where I grew up. It's like a rainforest. We had rain 10 months out of the year. And then I lived in New York and Miami, and now I live in LA. We have no rain in LA at all. And I feel the difference. I feel when I go for a few weeks or months without going to a place that gets rain, I feel it. So I feel like water has a huge impact on the way we are, other than the fact that it sustains us and that we live, But I feel like there's an energetic component to it, and I'd be interested in learning about it. And I know there are some discussions in circles that's going on about it, and I'd really be interested if anyone would chime in on that with me later on. Thank you. Hi, Beverly.
Hello. Besides sacred geometry, I just would like to point out that there's a growing science about the power of shape to change space.
Yes.
The work of Ibrahim Karim, who's Egyptian, lives in Canada, who used ancient Egyptian shapes to try to help a village in Switzerland that had difficulty with Wi-Fi. The cows weren't giving milk, the children had learning disorders, and adding certain shapes to the bell tower where the cell phone radiation came remedied all of this. And the cows gave milk again, the children could learn. And then the work of Dan Davidson, who wrote the book Power of Shape.
Yes.
So those are two good sources, and I think there may be even a link to the ether. The old concept of science, which of course is being revisioned.
Yes.
So I encourage you to look into that as you
Thank
develop
you.
more beautiful designs.
Yes, I think form definitely has a big impact on how we respond to the world and how we respond to things. So it makes sense. Thank you.